Hello again. This video is going to be a very, 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 very good video. So please watch the whole thing. I will make it short, and I'm going to expound upon the current ideas of what breatharianism is, and I'm going to consolidate the old videos, the very few videos that I posted up, and kind of draw out a conclusive picture, very fun picture, to get the understanding of what breatharianism is and how our bodies, how it is able to work and function within our bodies. The first thing that I'm going to do is compare ourselves to the earth and the sun, and really kind of either redefine for people, or newly define it for people, what I think the relationship between the earth is and us, at least our bodies, right? And that thing is basically the fact that the earth is a breatharian. In order for one to understand breatharianism, we have to look at the key, the head honcho breatharian, and that's the earth. When you look at the earth is a self-sustaining organism. Now, if you don't believe the earth is alive, then, tell me how a dead thing can give birth to a living thing. This is philosophy. If you don't understand philosophy, then this video is not for you. If you've ever seen a dead woman give birth to a child, then you're one in a gazillion, because it's never happened. Life can only give birth to life, and that's why the earth is called Mother Earth, and it's been called Mother Earth for eons, because it is a living thing. Not only is it a living thing, it's a breatharian in terms of how you want to define, in the way it's defined. The earth is self-sustaining. It as a body, it is self-sustaining. It has microorganisms like we have microorganisms. It breathes like we breathe. It is composed of water like we're composed of water, and it reuses these things. We don't reuse these things. In fact, a lot of the things that die within our body gets excreted out the body, but the earth, when things die, it gets reused. Water gets reused. The water within our body does not get reused. It gets toxic and it gets pissed out. And to understand breatharianism, you have to understand how the earth works. And so, if the earth is a self-sustaining organism, then that means we have to learn how to be self-sustaining and not just taking in life energy, but being clean enough where we can actually reuse the nutrients in our body, and beyond that, actually having enough nutrients to become considered a standard of a miniature earth. Because right now, I think people are not even getting enough nutrients in their diet, raw, vegan or not. They're not getting enough nutrients in their diet to be at that standard in which they can actually become self-sustaining. There are prerequisites before one can do this. But getting back just to the overall picture, you have the earth, and then the earth is drawing some type of energy in order to propel the organisms that exist within its body, and it's getting this energy from the sun. Now, we could stop there and say, aha, the sun, it just comes back to light. The light, feeds all life forms. But that's not true, because we're starting to find organisms that don't even see light. And not just that, a person will say, you know what, it's fine. They don't get light directly, but they get byproducts of light, which is plant form, which is animal form. And I say no, because there are organisms that have been discovered that I will talk about shortly that are void of all light, void of all plant matter, anything that's remotely related to the production of sugars and light. It's void of all these things, and it's alive. And scientists have discovered them. I talked about them in the last video. And so my point is that light doesn't cover all things. It doesn't permeate all things. It doesn't travel through all things. Light bounces off of things. It's not really an efficient thing. It's good for the surface, but what about underneath the earth? And so anyway, essentially, I looked into more of this life energy by those who've studied it immensely, and sacrificed their life, their careers to getting this information out. And again, it was Tesla and Wilhelm Reich. Mostly Wilhelm Reich, because Tesla, being so intelligent, he never really written a lot of the stuff down for it to be understood. But for Wilhelm Reich, he written almost everything down, but only a few things remained because the FDA burned up about 6 tons of his literature in a New York incinerator. But when he studied this, when Wilhelm Reich had isolated this and concentrated this and created this thing called the orgone accumulator, which was a box that would be layered with specific material that he knew would concentrate or would gather and attract this life energy into a concentrated amount, he studied all aspects of the effects of it. He studied the temperature inside of the orgone accumulator and how it differed greatly than the ambient atmosphere around the box, in which the temperature was a lot higher on the inside, and the exterior was a lot cooler. And he noticed the temperature going up when this thing would concentrate. The second thing is, while he studied this and being exposed to this radiation and the methods that he used, which I won't get into right now because it's not important, but being exposed to this radiation, he developed conjunctivitis in his eye, and he said, looking at this in a microscope, certain organisms, I would call organisms, they weren't organisms, but I would call them organisms, so just to move on with the story. But while he studied these organisms underneath the microscope that was giving off this radiation, he said it was very much like looking into the sun. Then he concluded the sun being very much related to orgone energy. And it pretty much stops there. There's not too much information on orgone energy and the sun, but that was enough for me to consider something a lot more than the sun. And I think there are people on this planet who know this and who are either suppressing this or just not telling us. And what it is that I believe the sun is a giant orgone accumulator, or the sun is a giant dense sphere of orgone energy. The reason why I know this is because the same principles that apply when gathering orgone energy, which one uses water to gather orgone energy, metals to gather or reflect it, and then inorganic material, meaning like plastics. Organic material like plastics, wool. Different organic material kind of pull it in, and you have metals that reflect it. And even gases have a relationship with this life energy. Every matter in existence has a relationship with life energy, and he honed in on specific ones that would pull it in the most. Now when you look at the sun is not just a ball of fire, but it is at its core filled with iron. It is also filled with various different gases, and recently they discovered the sun being filled with water. And this is key, because this is trillions and trillions of gallons of water in the form of vapors that permeates the sun. Now this is important because if you know that water, H2O, greatly attracts life energy, would it differ? Would that equation change with the sun? And the fact that life energy tends to warm up a particular space when concentrated, would that change with the sun? It would not change with the sun. It will just be on a larger scale. And these materials, it's no coincidence that the sun has all of these variations, these different materials within its makeup, because this is the role of these materials. These materials are literally, I believe, engineered by whatever power or whatever God in existence to accumulate this life energy and to create an infinite source of energy via light, via heat, via raw life energy for the earth. And the earth is a breatharian in the sense that it basically pulls in and feeds off of this life energy to spawn life within it. This is how I believe the body will operate when it reaches that state. The body will first have to accumulate much material, much metals, various different nutrients, clean water, clean its own water, and be able to get to the point where it can hold on to these nutrients within the body. And once this happens, it will start pulling in and drawing in massive amount of life energy, where it will flow through the body. And where it will go, where it will concentrate, is I believe is in the intestine, as it's always been mentioned in ancient philosophies about the Dantian and the navel chakra, and the energy center, the intestine being the energy center. Modern science validates that there's more nerves coming out from the intestine than the entire nervous system. Science validates that there's more microorganisms in the intestine than every other cell in the entire body. Science has validated the intestine being a second brain, because it literally has its own nervous system, and it operates separate from what the brain tells it. There's more signals coming from the intestine to the brain than the brain to the intestine. The intestine is just full of just many different wonders, and even our digestive tube is not just used for pulling down food, but obviously you have a tube that goes to our lungs, and actually one that continues down to our intestine for a reason. Wilhelm Reich said that life energy is infused with many different molecules, and it's concentrated within air itself. It flows on streams of air. And so there's a lot of different things I can talk about how life energy was used, including the fact that he was able to concentrate this and power small motors, and Tesla as well. They were able to concentrate this energy for it to break down and discharge into electrical energy to power devices, to power batteryless machines, wireless machines from great distances. And so the body, I believe, is capable of these traits. Secondly, not stopping at the bacteria. Again, Wilhelm Reich had considered this to be a radiation, and it's still considered to be a primordial radiation, to the point where it can cause the skin to tan. This is the reason why a lot of people will do a raw vegan diet. Even though they get lots of sunlight, they're still pale, to the point where they do raw veganism and their skin gets darker, because there's radiation emanating, causing their skin to get dark. So there's a radiation there, and there's also the discovery of bacteria, as I spoke earlier. There's bacteria that was discovered 2 miles in South Africa in a mine that was void of all sunlight, that's void of all byproducts of light, meaning plants or dead animal or any type of other organism. There's nothing there but the bacteria, and it's feeding off of uranium, they said. If it's feeding off of uranium, then it can feed off of, there has to be bacteria for almost any type of environmental condition. So by concentrating this life energy within the body, I believe you start culturing a bacteria to feed off of it and discharge that radiation into electrical energy to drive the body. But this again has to be done by one cleaning the body so much that the body does not need to pull on its own nutrients to neutralize the acidic waste. Once the body becomes clean, it can start holding on to these minerals, but sadly people only rely on the living food itself to draw their nutrients from when the food is very sick itself. And the food has never been anything as it's been millions of years ago. We have to think about how this planet was in actuality, how it was existing millions of years ago. It existed millions of years ago. We can learn how it was millions of years ago compared to now. It is malnourished now, and you know, there are ways of obtaining high amounts of nutrients into the body so the body can get back into a type of nostalgic environment that once existed on its genetic line. And so that's it. Basically, the earth, or our bodies, have the ability of having attributes of the earth and the sun. The body is obviously much like the earth in the fact that it has water, nitrogen, oxygen, carbon, and all these other nutrients and minerals that exist in this earth, and organisms to carry out its tasks. The earth is very much the same thing, but what drives these organisms is this ball of life energy that we can create a miniature version of inside our intestine. So that's pretty much the whole video. Hope you got a lot out of it, and stay tuned for the next one. Thank you. Peace.